paragraph that begins free cash. If you read that one that says free cash may be used for certain one-time expenditures, all of that wording is almost a redundancy of that previous paragraph.
Well, no, because it's also considering emergencies, unanticipated expenditures.
Right. So what I did then, Karen, is I added those two things into the overall sentence so that the sentence read, amounts in excess of this amount may be made available and recommended for appropriation at town meeting for capital purchases, one-time expenses, reserve funds, other discretionary grant awards and donations, parenthesis, for example, Tri-Town Council, close parenthesis, emergencies, other unanticipated expenditures, and to reduce the tax levy with the amount of the reduction to be typically less than 1% of the tax levy. So that catches all of them.
I see what you're doing, and that might be right, but what I found is interesting about the way this is written, and we're just following the Collins Center document, right? Yep. The first one's to say, well, we're going to endeavor to maintain a target. The next one says that it can't go fully depleted. And the third one says, well, if you've got one-time exceptions, here's how it's treated. Okay. So that's why I think it's three different intents and three different paragraphs.
It's the way they always do it.
And the way you're talking about it here might theoretically work, but it might be hard to get the language just right.
And if it's not consistent with the other ones that they've done, then it doesn't make sense.
I think also what you use it for at annual town meeting is one thing. When you have an emergency and you have to call a special town meeting, that's an emergency.
And then, and then we've got the safety bridge that it can't go below a certain thing.
Near the top of 7, I think it is, general stabilization policy guidelines. I think, does it start that way? Yeah, right, okay, third line down at the end, I would say, we'll strive to make to try to make annual appropriations into, not an annual appropriation, because it's,
that works.
because we're talking about a 5-year period.
The annual appropriations.
Into, because it's a 5-year time frame. You're doing multiple appropriations to achieve it. And then, I think the last sentence in that paragraph is totally redundant with what's just above it, and I would strike it, but again.
I think it's the same thing. The way the documents were read, at least when I was going through them, we're trying to say, well, if you need to.
You're saying that it should stay there because
I think
it
needs to stay there because the one's telling you what you do when you plan, and the other one tells you if something unforeseen happens, then what do you do?
Under the capital stabilization policy guidelines, it indicates that it would be the first sentence, at one point, funds that may serve as funding source for the town's capital improvement plan. That's fine, but then it says including associated debt service. I think that's almost dangerous. If you think about if you were a Standard & Poor's, when you're doing a bond or something, you want to know where the money is coming from, that there is a source of money that's going to each year provide it. So if you say that, and you went to them and you said, oh, well, we're using right here in our policy, that we're using a stabilization fund to do it, then you almost have to say, well, you've got to have enough money in there to do all 30 years of payments or whatever it is. I think it just should be struck. I think it's asking for trouble to suggest that that fund would be used to service debt.
There may be a year when that's the way you can make it work.
That may be, but it's a policy that you're saying, in a sense, that you intend to use it that way.
Well, no, it says only if it's necessary. It says if it's necessary, meaning that, like...
I just can't understand. I'll leave it.
So, no, Dick, I sort of agree philosophically, but this sort of gives the town more flexibility.
Dick, I'm going to
just because it doesn't say the words doesn't mean you can't use it.
Mr. Gant, I'm going to jump in here, okay? This is we started with a prototype.
I'm not trying to change it.
We started with a prototype from the Collins Center. Our town administrator worked on it. Our finance committee worked on it. Okay. I'm not going to just sit here and go through wording changes. Do you have any corrections or typos or that type of thing that you want to get out here? I'm not redoing, I have too much respect for these people to go with minutia and changes of wordings that are inconsistent with the Collins policies. I'm just,
Does the Collins policy have that in there? I don't think so.
Dick, do you have anything that's productive?
That's it.
If you have errors,
That's
that's
it.
it? Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they want to get in before we take a vote?
In the establishment of fees and charges, it says town fees and charges should be reviewed periodically. By whom? Is that's the selectmen?
We don't have the power to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotta be the selectmen.
Where did you go, Karen?
Under, section 7, under the policy guidelines.
What page is that, Karen?
12, from the printed one. Town fees and charges should be
Yes.
reviewed periodically in relation to the cost. And so,
By the bodies who set those fees.
Right, which is a court over.
yeah, the schools.
Consider
Water,
charge
water,
fee,
money.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
by the bodies.
Building permits.
Yeah, the selectmen, I was thinking specifically building
Yeah.
permits, so it's a selectmen, but
Policy guidelines.
I think that was the only substantive.
Anybody else have any changes that need to be made before votes?
I just have one small, and it might be in the wording, Kelly, so this might just be fine. It's on page 4, the top of it. Proposed changes to personnel levels should be identified. When we say levels, is that the number of people or the level of the steps? Remember before we got into that, if you, wait,
The head count.
head count. Oh, so are the level increases like we went through with the town clerk now, is that considered in there as well? So not only the number of people, but if we foresee, because before, I think there was a policy that said you had to bring any pay increases to the budget process by January 1st. The whole discussion came up with the town
Yeah,
clerk about when you have to present
So
them.
what dictates that is the personnel bylaw. So that's more rooted in the classification system and the way that works. We don't necessarily, what all of this is saying is that we need to look at FTE head counts and recognize that it doesn't get to that next level of how do you implement the classification plan or the steps and the grades and the step advancement. That would be covered under the personnel bylaw.
So
Okay, and you don't need to know that during the budgeting process? Because
Well, that gets to that earlier comment that we were making about making your budget request based on what you have this current fiscal year, and then separating the approval process to move forward with the budget planning process. So you're gonna separate those two items, and, I don't know
both
that
would
I
be
am
considered in
explaining it.
here, right? It means,
Yes, but it would be considered as part of the budget planning process. If we were gonna increase headcount from, you know,
I
2
think
employees
it's-
to 3, it would be part of the budget process to review that, and that's covered in the other item. This just really talks about FTE, probably, the FTE
So
equivalent.
this is proposed changes to staffing
To
levels.
staffing levels, correct.
Not personnel levels.
Correct.
So staffing levels
Staffing levels. Now, this was on page 4.
at the very top, the sentence at the very top.
For what it's worth, I've done a spell check, so it shouldn't be anything really changed on that. Although I will point out that both publicly
Staffing
and
levels.
public alley
Are
are
allowed.
both acceptable, so you have a choice.
Publicly?
So I suggest we
Is
put
it
one with
publicly?
the other in parentheses.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
I would never.
I had to
Is that
check.
the word
I
that
would
you
never
said?
have.
John, did you just mention publicly?
That was the one I came
Was
up
that the word that you
Publicly
mentioned?
and publicly,
Public.
L-Y,
Spelled both
A-L-y,
ways?
is both ways, both
Yeah.
acceptable.
Knew it.
But it says, this has 2 L's in one of them.
That's right.
And 2 L's without the A
As
as
long
well.
as you're consistent.
All right.
Two L's with the A.
I think Microsoft, they spell check.
I wasn't gonna split
I just-
hairs,
it's
but
not-
I know that was right.
Karen, are you comfortable going to a
It's
vote?
not the, yeah, it's not
Yeah,
the
I
old
still
time.
Should I go first?
I realize it's come into current practice.
Good, and as we find typos, we'll,
Obviously, we're trying to use that all the
Right.
time.
It's a living document.
Go up and then period by review.
So one thing, sorry, I never checked all these references, like one of these is like Emerson versus Boston.
That's what you go to law school for, right, Mark?
I didn't, but.
Right, Lou?
That's a famous text versus.
See?
Right? yes,
No one
Emerson.
gets a
You
stipend.
can't, I can't
There you
do
go.
$100 for something that only costs us $5.
Okay.
Actually, as a part of the process that we began to do, we do have a compilation of all the reference
Okay.
MGLs. And so, we'll put that on the website.
So we can approve this tonight?
We are, FinCom should take a vote.
FinCom.
Motion to approve the
Second.
finance policy guidelines for December 2018
As amended.
as
As
amended.
amended tonight. And that is seconded?
Well, should we have like one of those, like, and if there's other typos, you can obviously change the typos that we find?
Will we authorize?
Scrivener's errors.
Authorize Kelly?
Authorize Kelly
So
to,
to, uh,
My master's
correct and
degree is-
identifying and correcting
Minor
the minor
typos,
typos and edits.
Yeah.
okay, so motion,
I'll second it now, sorry, I jumped the gun.
discussion?
That's what it's like.
What's the definition?
May or shall?
She can't move it where it
All in favor on the FinCom?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, thank you.
I'll entertain the comparable motion, if not an identical motion, maybe.
I so moved.
There was any discussion on the, whatever, the selectmen? Board of Selectmen? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, it's unanimous.
Who seconded it for you guys?
Mr. Jackson.
Snuck that in there.
Well, that was quick. 18 months or something like that.
My God, it's about
Hey, democracy is not efficient. I learned that through this.
We have a motion to adjourn. Let's
Move to adjourn.
This is some bugs, though.
And Dana?
That's unanimous. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.